Chris, AirBoss of America has been involved with PPE for years, designing and manufacturing since the mid-80s, I guess it is. So this is nothing new for the company. But you think that the pandemic, combined with your abilities to produce these kinds of products, is really sort of right place, right time for AirBoss?
Yeah, in a sense, it is right place at the right time, and our pedigree helps, particularly our pedigree on the defense side. Because when you think about personal protective equipment and you think about military grade, when you put those two things together and you have a pandemic of this scale and you think about doctors and nurses on the front lines, you really want to give them the best possible protection they can get. And with our pedigree on our masks, our filters, and our purified air respirators, we're really in the right place at the right time with the right product, with world-class products and the ability to scale them up.
The masks that everybody hears about are the N95s, but you say that these powered air respirators that your company produces, the PAPRs as you call them, are superior. Why do you say that?
So the N95 mask, it is able to filter out about 95% of the airborne particulates that a first responder might come in contact with. The powered air purifying respirator works on a different concept. There's a blower motor with two filters attached to it that goes on the belt of the operator, the doctor, the nurse, or whoever's in that position. It pumps air up through a hose into a hood and creates a positive pressure environment with filtered air. That filtered air, because it goes through our specialized filters, filters out 99.97% of all the airborne particulates. So there's quite a big gap in terms of capability of the N95 versus the powered air purifying respirator.
Now, just for an easy visual for people, you've compared these PAPRs to the movie Contagion, what a lot of the people were wearing in that. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, that is a fair way to characterize it. I mean, you see some of these movies in the hazmat suits and that sort of thing. This particular respirator, the hood goes over top of whatever the doctor or nurse is wearing, and because of the configuration of the blower motor and the hose and the pressurized air, it still gives that same sense of protection without putting an entire suit on.
Chris, one of the analysts that covers your company, AirBoss of America, said that the deal with the U.S. military was game-changing, quote unquote, and that's been borne out in your most recent numbers, record earnings and revenue on the defense side up more than 330%. So do you agree with that? Is it really a transformational kind of deal for this company, which has been around for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, we announced this transaction on January 1st, and it was really transformational for us because our pedigree in the past has been very strong on the engineering side, on the manufacturing side. But in terms of the ability to market our products globally, it wasn't necessarily our strong point. So what we did is we took the AirBoss Defense Legacy Group and combined it with Critical Solutions International, CSI. And CSI was a global company that was marketing medical devices, military equipment throughout the entire world. So by combining the two companies, we were able to take that strong engineering, manufacturing capability with the capability of the marketing throughout the entire world. I mean, they have agents embedded in every military around the world. They have contacts everywhere, and being able to mold those two key competencies really, I think, is what we thought could propel us forward.
Now, would you say, Chris, that this may just be a moment in time for the company, or that some of this growth and some of these contracts are sustainable and repeatable? Because even if there is a vaccine that comes along, let's say early next year, the governments are still going to want to stockpile. And you, as you say, you've got this razor blade model for the respirators where clients need to replenish with the filters and hoses and hoods.
I think if there's one thing that we've learned during this pandemic is that most governments don't want to be caught with their pants down again. And I think if you look at all the stockpiles that are everywhere, too many governments kept deferring the funds required to keep those stockpiles intact. So when this pandemic hit, whatever small and insignificant stockpiles were there were completely depleted very, very quickly. And then when you look at our product, the powered air purifying respirator, really it is a razor blade model. So yes, right now we have a major system fill component of it where we're fielding all these units throughout North America, but each one of these units requires two filters every shift. And we are one of the largest chem bioprotective filter manufacturers in the world. So we're able to then scale up that razor model to be able to continue to focus on that recurring revenue stream to keep those units operational.
Chris, you've said to fulfill that first contract with the U.S. military, you really had to ramp up quickly, and that in the early days there were some inefficiencies, but by the end of fulfilling that deal, you had discovered all these efficiencies. So can you Tell us what you learned through that process and the company's capabilities and maybe what didn't go right that you need to work on.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, our pedigree as strong in engineering and manufacturing is there and throughout all of our product lines. But certain product lines are high volume and certain product lines are not. The powered air purifying respirator in 2019, we sold less than 1,000 units. And in 2020, during the pandemic, we are up to 2,000 units per day that we're producing and selling. So getting from that kind of a level of productivity to the level that we ended up at towards the end of the FEMA contract was really a Herculean task. And when you consider, as a manufacturing person, you look at every operation that you do and you look for bottlenecks and you look for efficiency improvements. But if you're only making less than 1,000 a year, you never really get that engine really geared up and running so that you can kind of see where you need to improve your throughput. And so as we were able to get this productivity up, we normally were producing these in one factory. We ended up spreading them across 4 different factories for a variety of reasons. One, the sheer volume we just couldn't handle in one particular factory. But secondly, we were also quite concerned about any potential outbreak on the COVID-19 side because we really had to fulfill this contract for FEMA in order to save the lives of doctors and nurses. So we took that very seriously. So we really mitigated our risk by spreading out not only the 4 factories, but within the 4 factories, all the different lines were separated, different entrances, different exits. People were tested in and out just to make sure that we never had our own COVID-19 outbreak. So in the beginning, as we were ramping all this up, training new people, getting the assembly line set up, shipping product, because there's a lot of components that are required to build these all over the country, from all over the world, because our supply chain is a global supply chain. You can imagine all the inefficiencies that we started out with, and at the end of it, we had a highly trained team in 4 different facilities. We had a supply chain that, globally that was geared up, producing what they needed and when we needed it. And now as we go into the HHS order that we're going to start to produce in August, we're going to produce that in only 2 of the factories, in our 2 highly efficient factories that we've developed, and we'll be able to make the same kinds of numbers in a much shorter time.
So you've learned a lot clearly based on that answer. That's interesting. Now, let's look at the stock. A lot of interest in AirBoss of America right now in the markets. I want to go back to 2016. Stock peaked around sort of, let's call it 24 back then, but then into 2019, sort of a long, slow grind down. The trajectory was lower, below $8. Then the stock explodes on these new deals. So how do you maintain interest in the marketplace? How do you continue to grow, and how do you maybe get some new interested investors?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, and from our perspective, the past few years we've been making significant improvements in our business. And if you consider, for example, our rubber solutions segment, it's been growing at over 10% compounded annual growth rate every year for the past 2 years, and going into this year would have been the 3rd year in a row. And we invested heavily in our business in 2019. We expanded capacity that had been sold out. We doubled our capacity in our North Carolina plant. We added new product lines that we weren't making before on the rubber side, like colored rubber and specialty compounding. And so we were building up this exact foundation of our business, which we thought was quite attractive for investors from that perspective. Unfortunately, there seemed to be, for the past couple of years, kind of a negative perception on small cap industrials. And in a way, even though the automotive portion of our business was quite a small contributor, it seemed to be being painted sort of in that light. And then as we came forward with our defense group, which was growing significantly year over year, and then this big transaction on the AirBoss Defense Group, while rubber solutions continued to outperform and gain market share from our customers, I think the market started to realize that the automotive part of what we do is not necessarily the key driver. So as the market starts to understand that truly we are a commercial industrial company with a strong pedigree in engineering and manufacturing, with great capabilities on the defense side, great capabilities on the engineered product side, and great capabilities on the rubber solutions side, I think the market's starting to understand truly what we can contribute.